Can you tell me a bit more about your company for the beginning?
So for 30 years, I've been passionate about understanding how the brain makes decisions. So 10 years ago, I created a company that would do experiments to find out what happens when our brain is processing a message. How does attention works? How do we understand? How do we begin to make a decision? That's my company, and we've done this all over the world, and I'm here in Croatia to share the discoveries on how you can activate the right areas in the brain.
Which companies are doing a good and which ones are doing a bad job when it comes to persuasion?
Well, most companies, I would say,
Of course, the ones you coach
are
good.
unfortunately splashing messages on the brain, giving too much information, hoping that it will stick. At SalesBrain, our customers learn that you have to be very careful, you have to be very discriminant, you have to carefully pick and choose, and stay mostly visual and emotional. While we have this very sophisticated brain on the top of the brain, where we can process complicated information, for the most part we are very primal in the way we process advertising. So we enjoy visual, intuitive, and simple experiences. So customers who succeed are those customers that say simple, visual, and emotional.
Cool. It seems really easy, but it's quite hard, I think.
Well, you know, it's actually, you're absolutely right. It's in fact very easy to be complicated.
Yeah,
It's very hard to be simple.
it's always like that. When it comes to me, I try to avoid commercials as much as I can. Of course, I do it on a conscious level, not worried about the unconscious one. Which one is more important for marketing and why?
Well, we use both. Right now, we're both conscious of being together in this conversation.
But you're not selling me anything, you know? Okay, maybe...
Well, I'm selling you the value of paying somewhat attention to me and being motivated and smiling. So you see, the new frontier in marketing is to really understand both. Not just the conscious part where we can be reflecting and processing the data, but also understand what is happening below our level of consciousness. Our visual system, for instance, is working a lot below our level of consciousness. And we learned that from studies of eye tracking technology that tells us how much we concentrate on an image. So the success, I believe, ultimately for a marketer is to include both conscious and subconscious mechanisms. And we measure activity in the brain 10,000 times per second. And you would be shocked and surprised when we can find and predict behavior ahead of consciousness.
Wow.
I know. Where is free will? It's a big philosophical question.
Yeah.
We wondered really, truly, how many of our decisions are conscious.
Yeah. I'm just wondering. The most fascinating thing related to our brain is what and why?
How complicated it is, for sure. 86 billion cells called neurons, which all interact with one another. You know, one neuron will connect to 10,000 other neurons. At the same time, there are simple rules that we're beginning to uncover. One, for instance, is we do not want to spend a lot of energy. We are wired, you could say we are programmed, to minimize energy, which is why we enjoy to learn quickly, which is why we enjoy visual interactions, which is why emotions are actually chemicals in our brain that help us pay attention and remember. All of those mechanisms are happening without us thinking about it. These are biological rules that marketers need to understand.
Is it because we are lazy or we just want to save energy for some other process?
I prefer that. I don't think we're lazy, I think we're efficient. And efficiency is really about conserving and understanding that at critical moments of threats, of urgency, we do want to have access to all this energy. And unfortunately, the world in which we live in is demanding too much of our energy. A lot of the responses of our consumers is to avoid and splash back those messages. Marketers that are lazy will not succeed. The brain is not lazy. Marketers become lazy when they're not working hard to achieve effect on people's brains.
What is the most important thing when it comes to commercials and customers? The visual, the cute people that are like acting, or a catchy message, or everything combined?
Well, in the SalesBrain model, we consider that there are 6 conditions that make a commercial effective. One, it has to be centered on people's self-centeredness, egocentrism. It's all about me. So don't talk about your product with features and functions. Really tell me right away, what am I going to be, what am I going to become because of your product. Tell me in a very simple story what I am today without your product and what I will become tomorrow. We call that contrast. Because contrast in our brain is a signal that we have a very simple decision to make. Keep it simple, because I do not want to spend too much energy. We call that keeping it tangible, concrete. Hook my attention right at the beginning and try to hold it until the end. Those 2 points are the highest point of attention. We tend to forget everything in the middle. So the interview in the middle, you have already forgotten.
We're not there yet, so.
Keep it visual for sure, because the visual system in the back of our brain is consuming nearly 50% of our entire energy, and keep it emotional. So you see, these rules are sort of the recipe of a good message.
If everything is and can be sold, if you push the right brain buttons, why agency owners not doing it?
It's difficult. But those who are...
Do they, excuse me,
Yes.
do they have to hire somebody, like, a neuroscientist or something like that? Or can they, okay, you're learning them how to do it,
Yes.
but why isn't that,
All right.
why hasn't that expanded?
Yes, I think the first reason is habits are difficult to change. Marketers have habits, advertisers have habits, and in the brain, changing a habit is torture. So at SalesBrain, what we do is we do workshops to help people unlearn what they have learned for many decades and consider the new information which comes from the field of neuroscience, which really helps people understand that they're not just targeting people, they're targeting brains. And once you begin to relearn the value of a message for the brain, you create new habits. So that process of going away from old habits to new habits is a difficult one, but with our assistance and the assistance of people who speak on neuromarketing, I think it's happening, and it's happening really fast.
Okay. Will a neuroscientist soon be essential part of a marketing agency? What do you think?
Possibly. Clearly the brain is a new frontier. 90% of what we know on the brain is only a decade old. It's a young, exciting science. We certainly have more questions than answers. And I do see people like myself, media psychologists, neuroscientists, entering agencies, entering marketing departments, because those departments need better science to avoid wasting both time and a lot of money.
Yeah, there were a lot of people actually at your lecture. I was one of them. So yeah, hopefully something will stick.
Yes.
What happens if everyone knows about how to apply neuromarketing? Do we as customers go crazy because everyone is targeting our brain in the right way? So what happens then?
It's a great question. I think what happens then is the best messages will win. And the brain has this capacity to do what's called habituation.
Okay.
So we might habituate to great messages, and at that point, only the best will rise above the others, if you will. But it is, at the end of the day, still impossible to expect consumers to process all the messages. We process on average 10,000 messages per day, and we ignore most of them because we don't have the energy, and we'll never have the energy to process all the messages.
Can we overload on content?
We do all the time.
We do.
And our answer,
How
our
does the brain
response.
pick like what to? Okay, I do my work. Okay, I have to be focused on that. But how do I not focus on any? What's the process in my head?
Well, the process would be maybe to use your consciousness, your ability to observe yourself, and call for a moment of quietness. You know, meditation is really a practice, or mindfulness is a practice that helps you in a way filter all the noise around you. So a lot of people today find that the best way to reboot your brain is to meditate or to go in a quiet space and allow your brain to settle down. You know, it's a little bit like when water becomes blurry. If you wait long enough, all the sediment, if you will, or the blurriness is going to settle down, you know, at the bottom of the water. And Zen practices is all about waiting for sometimes hours in front of a bottle of water just to see clarity into it. So yes, for humans it is difficult to deal with all this noise, but mentally we have the capacity to try to create space, and it's a practice.
Cool. Is neuromarketing ethical and moral, and where do you draw the line, and what would you never do as a SalesBrain company?
Yes, it's a great question. In a way, neuromarketing is in fact revealing a lot of techniques that have been used for decades. So it's not because of neuromarketing that these brilliant campaigns will necessarily happen. They may happen more often. So the real issue ethically is to consider that when you use persuasion, you're using it responsibly. Neuromarketing, like any science, is power, and that power you need to use responsibly. Personally, my journey is to make sure that we're not doing campaigns towards vulnerable people with products that can be harmful. Tobacco to people who are minors is harmful. So if you create a campaign targeting 16 years old, that's not ethical. If you're wanting people who are mentally fragile to do certain things, buy products that they're not able to understand, that's not ethical, you see? So there are, in any society, most companies have the ability to regulate themselves, or sometimes they need to be regulated. And it's a very different story in America than it is in Europe. In America, it's largely self-regulation. In Europe, you do have laws making it illegal to target teenagers for junk food or tobacco or alcohol products. So the subject of ethic is a big one. It is about being responsible and doing the right thing.
Do you think that neuromarketing should have like a law of its own or something like that?
So I created the first code of ethics for the industry. And if you go to our website, salesbrain.com, you will see code of ethics.
Okay.
And the association...
Is it like a law approved by some...
Well, we have an association of neuromarketers. I'm on the board of the association. And we decided the first thing we're going to do is make sure that people who are doing neuromarketing agree to practice the code of ethics.
Okay.
So we were really proud that our members, which I would say 90% of the very serious neuromarketing agencies have membership to the NMSBA, they are pledging to honor the code of ethics.
It's like in medicine.
Yeah, very much so.
So let's say I own a marketing company and I call you or send you an email saying that I need your help. What happens then? How does it work?
We like to educate our customers first and foremost so that they can unlearn these bad habits.
You mentioned that earlier, okay?
Yeah, typically we've trained over 80,000 executives around the world, 20 different nationalities. And we like to help people appreciate and welcome this new perspective, which is to convince an organ, the brain. Typically during our workshops, people have these aha moments. Oh, I cannot believe I've been splashing my messages on the brain. And then they begin to learn that there's a recipe. These 6 stimuli is a recipe. So how do you practice that recipe? So we have them practice during the workshop. And it's during that experience that our brain learns the best. It's one thing for me to tell you, change your habits. It's another for you to actually do something in an activity where you're experiencing the outcome of changing your habit. Because you're doing it, because it's an experience, your brain is rewiring itself. So we do that, and then we offer services like neuromarketing research, consultancy. We do in fact neuro-creative services. And it's at that point, after education, that people realize, okay, I know what I need, I know why, let's go for it.
Right. What about the minority of people that can see or hear? Can you apply neuromarketing on them, and how?
Right. Great question. I insist a lot on the visual aspect of communication.
That's why I'm asking, yeah.
But, brains of people who cannot see are extraordinarily active and intuitive. Mm-hmm. They depend on touch, they depend on other sensory experiences, their capacity to smell, their capacity to taste, and of course their capacity to hear. In the research that I've done, for instance, on effective communication, when you speak to people who cannot really see, 85% of your effectiveness is your tone of voice. Mm-hmm. So neuromarketing is not just about visual effectiveness, it's about sensory effectiveness. Our voice has the capacity to communicate excitement, passion, as well as fear. And it's understanding those components that neuromarketing can do, which typically traditional marketing has not addressed.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's all from me. Hopefully, oh yeah, I have one more question. I'm sorry. So, is our brain getting more lazy as the technology gets better?
Well, that's a big question. I think our brain is adapting, very much like our species is adapting. And in a world that is bombarding us with messages, we're learning to, in fact, discriminate and avoid many of those messages. We're learning to depend on devices, such as this one, to in fact not overload our brain. The reason we are so happy to have Google and laptops and smartphones is, in a way, you could argue, it frees up our brain for potentially better attention. It frees up our brain for creativity. It frees up our brain to create experiences and sensory experiences that we have never done before. So some people argue it makes us dumber. Some people argue it, in fact, frees space for us to be enjoying life a bit better.
Do you think it's important that I know like how to calculate 5 times 6 by heart, or like did I forget about it and did I
So educators would tell you that the brain initially does need to learn what learning is, and it's very difficult to learn the value of computation if you don't perform it yourself. So as adults we may not need it, but as we grow at school, it is important for us to in fact remember, the ABCD, remember how we compute, because that's mental or brain gym, and the brain is very much a muscle. If you don't make it stronger initially, it will not develop to be a strong brain. Mm-hmm. So initially we need to do it, then eventually we don't.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for this conversation.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we'll have a great weekend.
All right, thank you.
And we'll stay in touch. It was very interesting and inspiring.
Good. Thank you very much.
As well as the lecture, as like this interview.
Wonderful. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.